the room I sleep in now used to be hers. My sister's. I could have chosen any other room in the house. The guest room with the faded blue curtains. The small study downstairs with the window facing the garden. But no, I chose hers, and I don't know if it was defiance or longing or something deeper and more primal, something broken. There's a kind of gravity in things that once belonged to someone you loved, especially if they're no longer here to claim them. You don't just inherit furniture or space, you inherit the echo. The breath still lingering in the wood, the warmth that never fully left the sheets. I didn't want to sleep there, not really. But I couldn't sleep anywhere else. It was like something in me needed to be in that room, like something in that room was waiting. The first night, I turned off the lamp and lay back on the bed. It felt too quiet, not peaceful, not safe, just still, still in the way a held breath is still, in the way something watches before it moves. I closed my eyes, trying to tell myself it was fine, that it was just an old house, just air settling, just silence filling in the cracks. But a few minutes in, I felt the mattress shift beside me, just slightly. A small, sinking weight pressing into the other side of the bed. Not fast, not jarring, just steady, deliberate, like someone lying down beside me, gently. I didn't open my eyes at first, because opening them would mean acknowledging that it was real, that it was happening, that something was next to me. My breath caught in my throat, not from fear, but from knowing, from familiarity, because it didn't feel foreign. It didn't feel like a stranger had climbed into bed. It felt known, as if I'd shared this bed before, many times, as if whatever it was belonged here even more than I did. My heart began to thud, not in panic, but in rhythm, slow and heavy like footsteps on old floorboards. I reached for the lamp, trying not to shake. The click of the switch sounded too loud in the quiet, and as the light flickered on, I turned my head quickly, instinctively, but the bed was empty. The pillow beside me was untouched, the sheets perfectly straight. But when I placed my hand on the mattress where I'd felt the weight, it was still warm, not hot, not fresh, but warm, like someone had just been there and left, or not left at all. I stayed up the rest of the night, sitting upright, trying to find explanations. The house was old, springs shift, the wood bends with the temperature. But deep down, I wasn't trying to reason. I was trying to forget. The second night, I did the same thing, turned off the lamp and lay down. And again, it happened. The weight beside me, the breath in the dark, but this time it was closer, closer to the center of the bed, closer to my shoulder. I opened my eyes in the dark, not daring to move. I could see the shape, not with my eyes, but with my skin, the indentation beside me, the pressure near my chest. A soft sound, not louder than a whisper, came from behind me. Breathing, slow, steady, in and out. The kind of breath you only hear when someone is asleep. But I wasn't asleep, and neither were they. I turned on the light again, The presence vanished with the brightness, but the air still carried its outline. The third night, I left the lamp on. I thought light would stop it, thought maybe it was afraid. But sometime around 3 a.m., the bulb went out on its own. Not a flicker, not a slow dim. It just popped, gone. Darkness fell over the room like a blanket soaked in ink, and before I could reach for my phone, I felt it. The weight wasn't beside me this time. It was behind me, curling into the curve of my back. The breath warm against my neck. I didn't turn. I didn't move. I lay frozen, eyes open in the dark, staring at nothing. And I thought I heard it whisper. Just one word, not angry, not cruel, just sad. It said, "Stay." I don't remember what I did after that. I must have passed out, or drifted into some half-sleep where fear and exhaustion blur. But when I woke up, I was lying on the very edge of the bed, and the pillow beside me had a dent in it. A perfect shape, like a head had rested there. Like someone had finally slept peacefully right next to me. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even speak. I just made the bed slowly, with careful hands, and sat by the window for hours, watching the light move across the floor, wondering who it was that kept lying beside me each night, wondering why it didn't feel like a haunting, but a reunion. It didn't stop after the third night. In fact, that's when it began to change. It was no longer just weight beside me, or the subtle press of invisible skin against the mattress. It started to breathe deeper, louder, almost in rhythm with me, like it was listening, learning, mimicking. I would lie there in the dark, my eyes wide open, and hear it breathe in when I breathed out. Like an echo trapped in flesh, I stopped sleeping properly. I began drifting in and out of uneasy half-dreams, where I wasn't sure if I was awake or not. And in those dreams, or maybe they were memories, I saw a version of myself sitting at the foot of the bed, staring at me, just staring, expressionless. The same clothes, the same hair, but the eyes were wrong, too still, too empty. She never spoke, never moved, just sat there like a question waiting for me to realize I didn't know the answer. I started locking the bedroom door at night, though I didn't know what that would protect me from. Whatever this thing was, it didn't need hinges or keys. It was already inside the room, inside the house, inside me maybe, and worse than the breathing was the voice. It came in pieces, scattered across different nights, always when the light was gone. It never said my name. It never needed to, but it spoke just loud enough to make me freeze in place, like a string pulled tight behind my ribs. You left me. You weren't supposed to be me. This was my bed. I wrote them down, those whispers. I kept a notebook beside the bed, convinced that if I gave them shape on paper, they would lose their power. But they didn't. In fact, the more I wrote, the more I remembered. But what came back wasn't mine. They were hers. I remembered running down the hallway barefoot, not as the one being chased, but as the one doing the chasing. I remembered falling so fast, and the sound of my own scream, but the voice was too high, too light. Not mine. I remembered lying on this very bed, looking at the ceiling and whispering, "She'll be fine. She'll forget. She always forgets." And that's when I realized my memories had seams. There were stitches where none should be, places where things had been patched over, replaced, rewritten. I began looking through old photo albums in the attic. I thought it might help ground me, that seeing myself as a child would prove who I was. But as I flipped through each page, the photos felt wrong. I was in them, but never clearly. Always turned slightly away from the camera, always with my hand over my face, or in shadow or blurred. And in every single photo, there was only ever one girl. Not two, not me and my sister, just one. And yet, I remember two voices in the hallway, two beds in this room, two toothbrushes by the sink. I remember a pair of shoes always beside mine. But where were they now? Had they ever been there? Or had they been erased, piece by piece, like dust swept under a bed no one sleeps in anymore? I started talking to the shadow, not because I wasn't afraid, but because I was tired of the silence, the breathing, the watching. "What do you want from me?" I asked one night, lying flat on my back, staring into the ceiling like it might crack open and give me an answer. No response, just a long pause. Then the bed shifted, slow and deliberate, and I felt a hand brush against my shoulder. Cold, gentle, familiar. The kind of touch you recognize without needing to see the face. And then the voice, closer than ever, like it was inside my ear. "I want my life back." My throat went dry, not from fear, but from something deeper. Guilt, maybe, or grief. But how do you grieve something you never knew you took? I sat up, turned on the lamp, and the room was empty as always. But that night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor by the bed, notebook in my lap, and tried to remember everything, not just the facts, not just the timeline, but how it felt to be her, to be me. And something cracked open in my chest, a memory, real this time, clear. I was standing at the top of the stairs. I was holding a candle. She was behind me, laughing, calling me a scaredy cat. I turned too fast. There was a slip, a scream, and a body falling backward down the steps. Silence. Then the candle flickering alone in my hand. And me whispering to the dark, "I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to." But maybe I wanted it. Maybe some part of me always wanted to be the only one, to not have to share the room, the clothes, the attention. Maybe the shadow in my bed isn't haunting me at all. Maybe it's just trying to remember who it was before I forgot. And maybe it's working. There's a mirror in the hallway just outside the bedroom. It's old, oval-shaped, with a faded bronze frame and small cracks webbing out from the lower corner, like it's been watching too long and finally began to break under the weight of what it knows. It used to scare me as a child. I remember running past it at night, hand covering my face, just in case something inside it looked back that wasn't me. And now I find myself pausing there, staring longer, waiting. The strange thing is, I don't always recognize what I see. Not fully. Sometimes the reflections, a beat behind me, blinking too late, tilting its head when I haven't moved. Sometimes her smile comes a fraction too soon, like she knows what I'm about to feel. Other times I catch a flicker in the glass, just at the edge of someone stepping out of frame, though there's no one behind me. I tried telling myself it was stress, exhaustion, all the nights without real sleep, but yesterday morning I stood in front of the mirror and watched something I can't forget. I was brushing my hair, slow, distracted, half awake, and I looked up to find my reflection already watching me, eyes wide open, still, not brushing, just staring. My own hand froze midair, but hers stayed down. Our breathing was out of sync. My pulse hammered in my throat, and I stepped back, but the girl in the glass didn't move, didn't flinch. I waited for her to follow, but she didn't. She just tilted her head slowly, so slowly, as if mocking me. Like she'd been waiting for me to notice, waiting for years. I don't know how long I stood there, locked in that stare, but eventually, the hallway light flickered and snapped me out of it. I blinked, and she was gone, replaced again by my usual reflection. But something had changed. From that moment on, I stopped trusting mirrors. I started covering them at night with towels and old sheets. All except that one. That one stayed uncovered. Because part of me needed to see it again, needed to confirm that I wasn't losing my mind. Or that I was, and that at least the mirror would prove it. That night, I dreamed I was trapped behind the glass, watching someone who looked like me walk around the house, wearing my clothes, sleeping in my bed, smiling at my memories like they belonged to her. And when I tried to scream, the glass swallowed it whole. No sound, just fog and silence. When I woke up, there was condensation on the mirror, like breath, but the window had been closed all night, and I wasn't the one facing it. That morning, I went through the attic again, digging for anything, photographs, journals, evidence that I was me. Something to anchor myself. That's when I found the mirror's twin, stored behind an old mattress, covered in a sheet. Same frame, same shape, but cracked straight down the middle. A long, splintering line that cut the face inside in two. And suddenly, I remembered there had been 2 mirrors in this house. One in my room, one in hers. But after she died, one was removed. No one wanted to look into her side anymore. No one wanted to see what might still be lingering there. I brought it downstairs, placed it opposite the hallway mirror, so they faced each other, endless reflections stretching into darkness. And I sat between them, waiting to see which version of me would blink first. The light between the mirrors felt unnatural, like time folded in on itself. I could see infinite versions of myself, repeating, bending, some smaller, some distorted. But somewhere deep in that tunnel of reflections, one of them moved wrong. One of them stepped forward when I didn't, and I swear it smiled. Not kindly, not cruelly, just knowingly. That's when I understood something I didn't want to say out loud. The girl in the mirror isn't haunting me. She's rehearsing, practicing, preparing to return. Because maybe she was never dead. Maybe she was only trapped. And the real question is who's in the mirror now? It's who came out of it years ago and took my place. Maybe the reflection is the real one, and I'm what was left behind. A copy, a glitch, a mistake. The longer I stay here, the more I feel it shifting. My memories changing. My face becoming unfamiliar. Like the house is remaking me bit by bit back into her, or into something she needs me to be. And every time I pass that hallway mirror, I see it more clearly. The smile that isn't mine. The eyes that no longer blink at the right time. The breath that fogs the glass, even when I hold my own. I don't know how much longer I have before she steps through. Or maybe before I do. But the mirror knows. It always knew. The whispers came back louder after the mirrors. Not loud in volume, but in clarity. They no longer hissed half-formed syllables from corners, or passed through the walls like passing wind. Now they had shape, tone, and worst of all, familiarity. The first full sentence came on the 5th night after I uncovered both mirrors and let them face each other. I was lying in bed, lights off, covers pulled up, heart racing beneath them like something trying to escape a cage. And the voice came not from the room, but from inside my own skull, just behind my right ear. A low whisper, careful and deliberate, as if it didn't want to startle me, as if it wanted me to listen. Do you remember the stairs? I froze, because I did, not all of it, but enough to taste blood at the back of my throat. Enough to feel my foot miss a step in the dark, and the cold rush of air as everything tipped sideways. Enough to see her eyes staring up at me from the floor wide open, but no longer seeing anything. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to silence it. But the voice wasn't finished. You said it was a game. Another breath, a pause. I never meant to fall. I sat upright in bed, fists clenched, whispering back into the dark. You're not real. You're just in my head. But even as I said it, I knew that wasn't entirely true. Because hallucinations don't remember things you've buried. Shadows don't grieve. And guilt, real guilt, only whispers when you've taught yourself not to listen. The next night, she spoke again. You took my name, and that was the one that hurt, because names are more than labels. They are stories, structures, the scaffolding we build ourselves around. I remembered standing in the hallway after the fall, my mother screaming, my father silent, holding my arm too tightly. And someone, maybe a neighbor, maybe an officer, asking, which one are you? And me, lips trembling, whispering the name that wasn't mine. Not out of malice, not even out of fear. Just instinct, a reflex. As if the house itself had rewired me in that moment, choosing who would stay and who would disappear. Ever since then, I've worn the name like a borrowed coat, one that never quite fit, but I never dared return. She never spoke in anger. That's what terrified me most. The voice was never shrill or vengeful. It was sad, patient, like someone watching rain fall on the other side of a window, forever waiting to be let in. And slowly, I began answering her. Not out loud, not at first, but in my thoughts, in the quiet places, at the base of the stairs, in front of the covered mirror. I'd say things like, I didn't know. I was just a child. I didn't mean for it to happen. But every response only deepened the silence that followed, as if none of that mattered, because meaning doesn't erase consequence. And even children can carry secrets like seeds that bloom into monsters. One evening, I found something buried in the backyard. A shoebox wrapped in plastic beneath the lilac tree where we used to sit and braid grass crowns. Inside were drawings, crude, childish sketches of two girls, one always smiling, one with her face scribbled out, and a page torn from a diary, written in handwriting almost, but not quite like mine. It said, "She wants to be me, but I want to be gone." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the bed with the lights off, the box beside me, and asked the room the question I'd been too afraid to voice. Was it you in my place all this time? The bed dipped slowly beside me. No cold wind, no screech, just presence, heavy and quiet. And the voice, now softer than ever, barely a breath. You made me stay. That was when I finally understood the shape of the haunting. This wasn't vengeance. It wasn't possession. It was residue. A memory thick enough to cling. A version of her trapped not in the house, but in me. And every time I ignored the dreams, or covered the mirror, or turned on the lamp to make her vanish, I was simply deepening the divide between us, feeding the lie that one of us had to be erased. Maybe that was never her intention. Maybe she didn't want her life back. Maybe she just didn't want to be forgotten. Maybe the whispers only started because silence had gone on for too long. Not all whispers lie. Some are truths softened by pain. Some are apologies without a voice. Some are confessions spoken too late. And now that I've listened, truly listened, I can't unhear them. I don't know if I can be forgiven. I don't know if I deserve it. But tonight, for the first time in years, I whispered her real name. The one I stole. I said it into the dark, and the dark whispered it back. It took me 5 weeks to finally open the door. Not the front door, not the bedroom door. The other one, the thin one at the end of the second floor hallway, just past the mirror that no longer blinks. It had stayed shut all this time, like the house itself agreed it wasn't ready to be opened. But I knew what was behind it. I always knew. It was the room with no furniture, no light bulb, just a single window with broken blinds and dust clinging to the corners like something afraid to breathe. We used to call it the spare room, but it was never used for anything. It didn't need to be. Because after that night, the night of the stairs, the scream, the stillness, it became more than just a room. It became a pause, a breath held too long, the place where time didn't move forward anymore. And somehow, without words, the whole house understood. That room had ended someone, and I think it began someone else. Me, or at least the version of me that kept walking. The one that answered to her name. That learned to smile in pictures and forgot how to cry in silence. So I waited, for years, for the voice, for the mirror, for the night when the air would shift enough that I'd stop pretending. And tonight, the shift came. I didn't knock. I didn't hesitate. I turned the knob and pushed the door open like someone finally accepting a sentence. The room hadn't changed, still hollow, still damp with memory. But as I stepped in, I felt something leave me. Not fear, not even guilt, something deeper. A thread, maybe. One I'd been dragging behind me for too long. I walked to the center of the floor and sat down, cross-legged. No light, no sound, only breath. My own. And then not my own. Across from me, the air bent, like heat off pavement, like something trying to remember how to have form. And then I saw her. Not a ghost, not smoke or illusion, but a girl my age, my shape, my eyes, but not me. She was wearing the same clothes I wore in the old photos, the ones I always assumed were mine. She didn't speak at first, just stared, her lips barely parted, her arms resting at her sides like she didn't need them anymore, like she'd given up reaching. And I realized she wasn't angry. She was tired, tired of waiting to be remembered, tired of being erased. I didn't mean to become you, I whispered. My voice shook, but not from fear, from truth. And truth is always heavier than fear. You didn't, she said. Her voice was quieter than mine, softer, like a thought forming just before sleep. You stepped into the empty space. I left it open. I wanted to believe that it wasn't theft, that I hadn't stolen something sacred. But she looked at me, and something in her eyes broke. But you forgot me, she said. That's what hurt. That's what haunted. Not the fall, not the blood, not even the name. The forgetting. The slow disappearance of someone once held close. I started to cry, not out of shame, but grief. The kind of grief that has no ceremony, no funeral, just absence. I crawled forward, slow and clumsy, like a child in trouble. And I reached for her hand. It was cold, not from death, but from being left in the dark too long. She let me hold it. For a moment, we just sat there, two bodies made from the same shape, the same story, finally facing the split. I wanted to ask her what she wanted, what would make it right. But I already knew she didn't want revenge, or pity, or even justice. She just wanted her ending, not the way it happened, abrupt, cruel, silenced. She wanted the rest of the story, the closure, the truth spoken aloud. So I did something I hadn't done since I was a child. I said her name, her real name, slowly, carefully, as if lifting it from a grave, and the room changed. The air softened, the shadows receded, and she smiled, Not wide, not cinematic, just enough. A flicker of light behind tired eyes. And then she let go. Her body dissolved, not violently, not suddenly, just faded like breath on glass disappearing with the warmth of the sun. And I was alone, truly alone, for the first time in years. No whisper, no breath behind mine, no weight beside me in bed, just silence. And it was okay, because it wasn't empty, it was peaceful. And peace is what happens when truth finally has a place to rest. I stood up, walked out of the room, and shut the door behind me. This time, not in fear, not to forget, but to honor what had ended and what was allowed, finally, to begin. It's quiet now, the kind of quiet that feels earned, not like silence hiding something, but like silence that knows it no longer has to prove anything. The house feels lighter, not cheerful, not warm, just less burdened, as if it too had been holding its breath all these years, and now finally exhaled. I sleep better, deeper. There are still creaks in the walls, the occasional whisper of the wind through old window panes, but they no longer feel like warnings. They just feel like a house being a house. I don't lock the bedroom door anymore. I don't cover the mirrors. I've even stopped keeping the lamp on. Darkness doesn't scare me the way it used to, not because it's safe, but because I finally know what lived inside it, and what it wanted, and what I did. Most nights, I drift off without even thinking. But every now and then, just before sleep pulls me under, I feel the ghost of something beside me, not a presence, not a weight, just a memory, a breath, a familiar hush. It doesn't frighten me. If anything, it reminds me that I am not made of just one story. I am a collage of choices, mistakes, borrowed moments, and silences. And one of those silences belonged to her, to the girl in the bed, the one I became, the one I left behind, the one I couldn't name until it was almost too late. Sometimes I wonder if she's really gone, if by speaking her name and holding her hand and facing the room where everything ended, I somehow released her, or if I simply made space for her to rest deeper inside me, not as a shadow, not as a haunting, but as a truth I no longer need to separate us. We were never truly two. We were halves of the same fracture, one allowed to walk forward, the other frozen in the echo of a single moment. But even so, there are nights when I wake up just a little too suddenly, when I lie there blinking into the dark, unsure for a breath or two of where I am or who. And there are mornings, rare but unmistakable, when I find the right side of the bed slightly creased, as if someone had just risen before me, the pillow dented, the sheet folded back, warm, still warm. I tell myself it's nothing, that I must have rolled over in my sleep, that dreams are heavier in old houses, but deep down, part of me believes it's her, not angry, not unfinished, just visiting, checking, watching the life I've lived in her name, measuring it, wondering. Sometimes I whisper, "Are you still there?" Not out of fear, but out of habit, out of love, maybe, and on some nights, I hear the smallest breath in response. Not loud, not sad, just there, like an answer, like the last line in a story that doesn't need to end. I don't know if she'll ever fully leave. I don't think I want her to. Some stories aren't meant to close. Some truths aren't meant to vanish when spoken. And some names, once said aloud in the dark, never really fade. They just wait, quietly, on the other side of the bed.